So a very important aspect of streaming is something called encoding. Encoding is nothing more than converting what's being seen in OBS Studio and shipping it off to Twitch in a file format that an internet browser would actually be able to use. Now there are multiple ways to do encoding, but in this video we're only going to be going over two ways: the X264 preset and NVENC. You can find these settings in OBS Studio under the Output tab, and then from that tab you can go to Output Mode and select the Advanced setting. First, we're going to be talking about X264. This is a software encoder that is heavily dependent on your CPU, and it's possible to change the quality of this preset just by going through and selecting what's called a CPU usage preset. So these presets range from ultra fast to slow or placebo. The faster presets don't look as good, but most of the time you can put a higher bitrate into it and you can make it look better. If you don't know what a bitrate is, that's fine. We will be talking about that later on in this video. The slower presets can make the video look a little bit better, but the problem with this ends up being that it actually uses up a lot more CPU than you'd like it to. So if you're trying to game and stream on the same computer, you will definitely have an issue with either lag on the stream or you're going to have an issue with lag in the game. Possibly both. Now in most cases you would probably be keeping that CPU preset set to default or very fast, and then you would try and put in as much bitrate as possible, but remember, you will be limited to your upload speed when it comes to that bitrate. If you really want to try a slower preset, you will need to make sure that you have one of the newer i7s or the AMD equivalent, which would be a Ryzen 5 or 7. Now if the only thing you're going to be using this computer for is just to capture consoles with a capture card, it's probably safe to try putting the preset down a little bit slower, so you can probably do faster or fast, just depending on the CPU. Your results may vary depending on the CPU that you're using. For example, if you try and game and stream at the same time with an i5, you'll want to make sure that you have one of the newer generations that have at least 6 cores. The extra 2 cores that you get from these versus the original 4-core CPUs can definitely help, but it still won't be as good as having something like an i7. The i5 is also wonderful if all you're wanting to do is just capture your console with a capture card. Just like I spoke about last time, feel free to try setting that preset a little bit slower than normal. Bitrate is a very important part of this puzzle. Now what you'll want to do is put 75% of your upload speed into your bitrate. If you don't know what your upload speed is, don't fret. You can go to google.com and use the speed test that they supply you directly on their webpage. It'll tell you your download and your upload. Now don't care about your download, all we're going to be caring about is that upload. Once you know what it is, put 75% of it into the bitrate, then try the stream and see how it goes. Now as long as your other settings in OBS that don't require CPU presets are set correctly, everything should be fine. But if you're having issues, we will be talking about how you can fix this in a later video. Alright, let's talk about NVENC. NVENC is really nice because what it does is it actually takes advantage of a chip that's built into any Nvidia graphics card that is 10 series or higher, and it actually does the encoding for you. That way you don't have to try and use your CPU. You won't take as much of a performance hit when you're using NVENC versus something like X264. So inside of OBS settings, you'll probably see two things for NVENC as long as you have the drivers and everything up to date. There's going to be one that's going to say NVENC old, and there's going to be one that says new. I think in most cases you're probably going to want to try to use the new one, as it's capable of pushing out a little bit better performance versus the older one. If you have any of the RTX series graphics cards, it's actually capable of doing what I believe is the equivalent of the medium speed for X264 without that much of a performance hit. So the presets for NVENC sort of make more sense than X264 too. Instead of dealing with slow and fast, it pretty much says, do you care about quality, performance, or do you want to be somewhere in the middle? So another cool benefit to using the new NVENC is actually something called Look Ahead. Look Ahead pretty much lets your computer dynamically choose the amount of B-frames that it thinks should be using at that point in time when you're gaming or streaming. So if you don't know what B-frames are, that's okay. B-frames are pretty much the amount of frames that your computer would try to use to try and make the quality of the stream look a little bit better. In most cases, the B-frames are actually set to 2. Alright, so that's all we have for you today. If you have any questions, if you have any issues about CPU presets and whatnot, feel free to leave a comment down below. You can even join our Facebook group. If you do that, we may be able to get back to you a little bit quicker.